Hey guys, Brycen with PRD Design here, and wanted to give you guys a look at what we're going to be doing with this project here. So this truck is a 1969 F100. It's a two-wheel drive long bed Ranger package, and this truck has 10,000 original miles on it. So what we're going to be doing though is to revitalize all of the truck to make sure that it all matches every other aspect of the truck. We're going to be actually pulling the motor out of this truck and resealing the motor. This truck sat virtually undriven from about 1971 until 2018, and then since then has had about 7,500 miles ish put on it in that time. And obviously during that time, gaskets dry up, things leak, and so from 2018 until now with 7,500 miles, the engine bay has gotten messy and oily and greasy and dirty and all that sort of thing. So really what we plan on doing is just returning the engine bay back to the condition that it should be to match the rest of the truck. So we're gonna reseal the engine, like I said. We're gonna actually pull it out, disassemble the top end, inspect everything, re-gasket what we have to, reseal what we have to. We're going to clean the engine down and actually repaint it back to the factory Ford Corporate blue and make it look just as nice as the rest of the truck does. So we've nicknamed this truck Victor, and that's because of the Victor mousetrap that is on the inner fender. I don't know, Victor just seemed to fit for a name for the truck, so we call it that. So we'll be referring to this truck as Victor. Like I said, we're going to be tearing into it and preserving what is left of the originality and bringing it back to that condition in some aspects. So it was a little bit neglected over the last couple of years, and we plan on returning it to its former glory. So. All right, so we got the engine out of Victor, and we got it on the engine stand here. We got the top end all pulled apart, all the accessories and all that. We got it laid out on the table here so we could really take a look at each individual part, analyze it, see how we need to clean it up and refresh it to bring it back to a good condition that will match the rest of the truck. So it's really amazing how original this engine is and all the cool parts that are on it, and how clean it is as well on the inside. So as you can kind of see, the outside of the engine's pretty gross and grody, leaking gaskets, everything, got the outside pretty messy. There was some stuff on top as far as, how it sat. We actually found a couple of, mice remnants up here and some other little things. So we get that kind of vacuumed off to kind of look at the manifold, and then we're looking at the valve train here. You can see all the valve springs still have the factory yellow paint on them. There's green paint on the springs here on the rocker shafts. Everything is super clean. I mean, you can really see all the good cast iron color inside, and as we look at it with a flashlight and stuff, there's just really, it just shows how clean it is on the inside. Now This engine has been apart once, and the story we got from the second owner was that when he bought it, the original owner had hoped to drive it and had a shop work on it because the lifters were stuck in it, and so they did some work on it to be able to make the engine run again. And so it has been apart, so there are some newer gaskets in here. As far as like the intake gaskets and some of those things. So we're going to be taking the top end the rest of the way off the motor, the intake and the heads, to really just look at everything gasket wise and make sure everything's sealed up properly. We're just going to go ahead and put new head gaskets in it, all new intake gaskets, just to freshen it up, make sure it's all proper and leak free. So again, we're going to go through everything with a fine tooth comb and really kind of highlight some of the original aspects of it to show how clean and original it is. So and then here on the table, you know, some of the components that were on the top, you know, everything from the heat stack that went around the exhaust manifold. I mean, just how much blue paint is still left on here is pretty amazing. These things are always rusted out and rotted out and trashed pretty much. So that's pretty amazing. This manifold is in pretty good shape over here. A lot of good casting still on there. There's a couple of rust pits. Nothing too bad. The original spark plugs were still all in there. So we got the Autolite 45s. We're going to be cleaning these up and running them because they were operating just fine. So we're going to do what we can to save those and still use them. The valve covers have definitely seen better days. The paint has been stained on them and stuff, whether somebody was spraying a cleaner on there, or I was told by the past owner that one of the radiator hoses had blown off, which would have caused hot coolant and everything to go everywhere, and I've seen that actually cause staining on valve covers and stuff too, but we'll get those refreshed. You know, original pulleys, original stuff, you know, original hosing on the breather from the valve cover, that sort of thing. Original engine mounts in here, Ford part numbers, still in really good shape. The rubber is nice and pliable on them. We have the original Autolite ignition coil here, still has the Autolite part number on here that you can kind of see. It's a little bit rusty in here, but we'll clean this up. It's kind of greasy and whatever. We'll see what we can do to make this you know, look as good as we can. The original Autolite temp sender was still in the manifold, that sort of thing. So as we get over to here, we have the original Ford water pump, and we're going to be freshening that up, make sure it's in good shape for the future here, ready to go. We're still going to run that pump, but probably look into the internals, make sure it's in good shape. It was not leaking, but we'll just verify all that. This exhaust manifold has seen a little bit better days. There's some original casting surface on here, but it was a little more rust pitted from just years of sitting and the rust doing its thing. The original Ford gaskets slash heat shields were still in both sides, so these were the originals. We did buy an NOS set of originals that we're going to be putting back in here, so that will look good once we get this all refreshed. And the original Autolite distributor with the part numbers on here, Autolite rotor, Autolite points, all that stuff is still original to the truck, which is pretty awesome. The vacuum line's original and all that. And then on top of all that, we got the Autolite cap with all of the original spark plug wires. So these are all Autolite wires. Every single one of them is labeled that way with the cylinder numbers on them, which is pretty neat. I didn't realize that the original wires had that on there, but the original wires here do have each cylinder number on there, which is pretty cool. And those were in still good working shape. So we're going to clean those up and still use those when we put it all back together. So over here on the truck, we've actually degreased down the engine bay and got all the dirt and dust and grime and oil residue off of things. We degreased it all down, hosed it down. And doing that kind of exposed some marks on the firewall. That was, I talked to some knowledgeable source there, and they informed me that most of these would have been assembly line markings. I've seen a few before, usually in the form of a number. And I'll step over here on this side and point out, looks like we have some initials on here. You do have an 18, it looks like on here. It's a 1-8. And then there's like an RF something here, it looks like a CL maybe, or an EL, and then some other markings here. And we'll show that in better detail in photos. But pretty cool to see so many original markings on the firewall still. And you know, there is a little bit of surface rust on the inner fenders and such, but we'll definitely, you know, get this cleaned up the best we can and preserve it so it doesn't go any further. We're not going to paint the inner fenders or anything. We want to just save them as they are because they really are in good shape. You just have very light surface rust where some of the paint had either been, you know, chipped off or whatever, and then it kind of progressed from there. But usually the battery, where the battery sits, are usually pretty, they get rusted out really quickly, and there's still a lot of black paint around there, which is pretty nice. So yeah, we'll be freshening the rest of this up, making it, you know, making it as clean as we can. And then once the engine's ready, we'll put it back in and make this thing run again. Well, we've taken the cylinder heads off, and the valve train we've kind of disassembled a little bit. We took the rockers and all those things off of here to be able to determine what exactly is going on inside of here, maybe what has been replaced in the past based on what we've been told. Everything looks really good, but it probably does have some new lifters in it. Everything else appears totally original to the engine. The rocker shafts and everything, you can still see the green paint on the springs on the rocker shafts and the yellow springs on the you know, the valve springs there. We've gone through and actually taken a couple of valves out of each one of the cylinder heads to kind of inspect. We were told it possibly had hardened valve seats installed, but upon inspection, it appears that they are just bone stock original, so which is fine. And but after taking these couple valves out, we determined that the original valve seals they're just hard and have seen better days after 54 years, and that's all good. But they did disassemble the engine enough to be able to put new head gaskets in it at that point. So these were a newer head gasket. We're going to be replacing those. So really at this point, everything looks really good. You know, there's typical carbon buildup on a truck like this with only 10,000 miles. You know, it's getting a lot of start and run for a few minutes and turn it off kind of stuff. So there's some carbon buildup, and you can see where there's potentially a little bit of residual, kind of probably a little bit of glistening, probably from leaking valve seals in the cylinders. So we're going to go ahead and put the new valve seals in to take care of those issues. So we'll clean up the engine here. You can see on the block where there's some original kind of wax paint marks inside of here. I don't really know 100% what all that means, but it's pretty cool to see how clean it is internally. So at this point, like I said, we're going to go ahead and you know, clean up what we need to, reassemble everything using as much of the original stuff as we can. Like I said, replacing the valve seals, gaskets, but everything else should be original. So pretty cool to see just how clean and original and nice everything is on this engine. So All right, so we've spent a lot of time prepping all the parts for the engine, prepping the engine down, and now we're at the point where we're getting ready to spray a new coat of paint on this stuff to bring it back to what the original blue would have been. So on the engine here, we actually took everything apart just because we did have some leaking gaskets. So in order to fix everything, we pulled everything apart and then, cleaned down the heads. We actually taped off everything and sandblasted all of the exposed surfaces on the cylinder heads and the intake manifold. Got that all sandblasted and prepped, and then, cleaned everything down. Put all the internals as far as the valve train back together. Put it all back, on the engine, all fresh gaskets and everything, and then prep down the exterior of the engine with etching. It's from Pour 15 called Metal Prep. Etches into all the surfaces and any bit of potential rust or anything that may have existed to give us a nice coat of or a nice fresh surface to be able to spray the paint on. So did that to the engine. All these parts have all been sandblasted and cleaned, everything from the dipstick to the air cleaner stuff, the original water pump, which we did go through and just make sure that everything internally was good on it and got it prepped up there. So at this point we're gonna spray paint and all this stuff and bring this all back to a nice fresh shiny coat of blue. So the next step after this will be to prep down the transmission and get it done, and then at that point we'll be ready to start installing it back in the truck. All right, so we are just about to the point here to be able to put the engine and transmission back in the truck. And as you can see, they're both sitting on engine stands here to be able to, finish up the work we were doing on the engine here. Obviously, we went through and repainted it all, refinished everything. All the components on the engine are all the original components that were on here. We didn't change anything. So they're all still the same 10,000 mile parts, the coil, distributor, all the rubber hosing here. Anything that we had to replace, we only did out of absolute necessity. So, internally, like I mentioned before, we did valve seals in it, all that. We did replace the gaskets on the exhaust manifolds with NOS Ford gaskets, and it also has a little heat shield built onto them. So that's what was on it, and we put new ones on there to replace the rusty ones that were on there before. Manifolds are still the original ones. We did clean them up a little bit. They had some rust pitting and some kind of scaly rust on them. We did soak them in a de-rusting solution in order to be able to clean them up. They do kind of have a little bit of that surface, and they're a little different on one side, but they are better than they were for the long term here. So again, just you know, reused and refinished some of the original parts and things. We sandblasted and painted up the pulleys and some other components on it. We did disassemble the water pump, put a new gasket on it, some of those kind of things, and then got it repainted. And then on the transmission, we wire wheeled it all down and you know, cleaned it up and got it prepped up, and then shot it in a cast iron gray paint to bring it back to that original cast iron look that it would have had. And then we custom made a stencil to be able to reapply the part number that was on here, and we'll show you guys that in some photos, kind of that process there. And so at this point, we're pretty much ready to mate the two back together and put it back in the truck. So we did clean up the engine bay. We degreased it all down and wiped down all the firewall and inner fenders and got it nice and clean. And then we did put a coat of the sweet patina sauce on the inner fenders to preserve them and to seal up the rust and keep them from progressing there. And it really brought the engine bay back to a really nice look. You know, you may be wondering why we are repainting some things and not others. Why didn't we go through and redo the inner fenders and redo some of this stuff? Well, we're trying to find that good mixture of you know, original slash, you know, redo and refresh. So the engine bay left a lot to be desired in this truck because of some years of neglect and abuse. So at this point, we just wanted to find that nice mixture of original and refresh to make it look and kind of match the rest of the truck. So at this point, we're going to put it all back together and get this engine back in the truck. All right, well, we have the engine and everything installed back in the truck here, and we wanted to show you guys all the details of what we've done. We kind of wish through this process we might have been able to do a little more filming with it, actually showing everything going in, but it's hard to do while you're getting all the work done. So like we already went through the engine, we talked about how we repainted everything and we're getting it all back together, getting it in the truck. So we did clean up the original radiator. There was a lot of copper that was showing on the top of the radiator here, and so we went through and cleaned that all up and repainted the radiator. There was an aftermarket drain or reservoir for the drainage of the radiator that was here. We decided to keep that out of it and put the horn back where it's supposed to be and just go back to the drain hose down the side of the radiator, more like it would have been from the factory. some of the other little details are the power steering was added in this truck by the second owner, and when that was added, they did not add the power steering cooler. So we sourced a factory original power steering cooler, got it cleaned up, and got it installed as it would have been. You know, and we did put new lines on the power steering and kind of got that system dialed in. And then we did put a new master cylinder on it. We did paint it a cast iron gray to hopefully preserve the look of the cast finish longer, and got that all set up. All of the sheet metal under the hood, so the inner fenders, firewall, bottom of the hood, all that stuff was had a pretty good coating of oil / dirt, grease, whatever on it. So we went through and degreased everything, really washed and wiped everything down to get it back to as good looking of condition as possible. There is obviously, like we've talked about before, some of the little bits of surface rust showing through in some areas. But we've gone through and kind of cleaned up everything the best we can without disturbing the original finish, and then applied a patina preserver to hopefully lock in that rust and keep it from progressing. So from there, some of those outside details, we cleaned up all the wiring to bring back the original finish. I mean, you can see even in certain areas, like down here by the battery where some of the alternator wiring is here, I mean, just how brightly colored these original wires are. There's just some, it's pretty amazing how good a condition these parts can be in. We did source, this is a turbo start Autolite battery. It's actually a newer style AGM battery, but it's built in this Autolite case that makes it look like the old school battery that would have been in here as a Group 27 battery. So we have that. We did have to make a new ground cable here, but it does have the original power cable for the battery, so that has all the original Autolite numbers on it and everything. The starter wire is all original. All the wiring up to this point in the regulator, the alternator, all that's all original stuff that's in really, really good condition. We did source, because they had been replaced, the heater hoses, so we sourced some aftermarket hose that has all the Autolite markings on it to bring it back to an original look. And then we retained the original little aluminum strap, the hose tie that was on here. We were able to save that and reinstall it to keep that look. The radiator hoses are new, but the clamps that are on here on the upper are original. And then on the heater hoses, a lot of these smaller clamps on the heater hoses, a number of these are new, you know, kind of original style replacements. Some of them are original, like the ones that go back to the carburetor. And we did source new spring clamps back at the heater control into the firewall for the heater hoses there. So new stickers were applied for the 360 sticker, and this is what it had, was the orange 360 with the white and black checkered flag on the side. So we sourced that, got that on there. Now all the little components on the engine are all original, and that is what is so cool about this project, is that everything was in such good condition that we were able to reuse it. So original plug wires, original cap, original rotor, original points, original distributor, original coil, original condenser. It's the original fuel line. And then we did have to put a new carburetor on it because at some point in its life before we got it, somebody had, I'm assuming when the second owner was going to buy it, whether it was getting it running after sitting for so long or whatever, instead of rebuilding the carburetor, somebody just went to a parts store and swapped it out with a kind of a China special. And so we sourced a factory correct part number, Autolite 2100 2-barrel, and that was already rebuilt, and got that put on the engine. We did, you know, put all new decals on here, kind of in the factory locations. As far as the you know, the engine, they give you these factory stickers. They have the idle settings and ignition timing and all that. So we put those on there just as it was when the truck came in. We redid the OK stamp on the valve cover. The valve cover gaskets, we put staples in to have that original stapled look. And that holds them to the valve cover when you were to take the valve covers off. The exhaust manifolds, we sourced NOS heat shield / gaskets for the exhaust manifold, so those are on there. It does have the original spark plugs as well, and those are still in there in running condition. And oh, what else? As far as some of the details, it's got the original fan shroud, the original fan. We just cleaned everything up, and these parts were just in such good condition. You know, this is the original caution fan sticker that was on there. And it's got the original alternator. So we did go ahead and replace the washer bottle or washer tank and pump. The original one was kind of yellowing, and it did have a couple of cracks in it. One was down the side, the other one in the front corner, and it just didn't look very nice. So we decided, being that they make them new, to put a new one in here and have that looking proper. To show you guys back here on the firewall, some stuff that you may not see very often. You see this, it's a relay back here on the firewall with the wiring, and that all is the control for the solenoid and everything for the overdrive, for the cable operated overdrive. So that's all the electronics for that. And then here in the front, we did go ahead and put all new belts on it, got all that stuff replaced. And, you know, the pulleys and everything all cleaned up and proper. And, you know, the fan we cleaned up, got bolted on there. On top of the course board here, there's a wire for the horn. We had to kind of repair that because it had been lengthened, and they had some pretty interesting wiring going on there. So we got the horns in place there. On the bottom of the hood here, we did clean it down and got it nice and clean. You know, you see some rock chips here. They're pretty common to see on the bottom of the hoods. The fans or the alternator pulleys or whatever will throw some chips, you know, up that way as everything's rotating around, and, you know, causes that on there. But other than that, the bottom of the hood looks fantastic. Still has a sheen to it, and it cleaned up real nicely. So, so back here on the back, where those the markings were and the lettering, we you know, got that all cleaned up. There was a wire there that was still there that was some kind of tag that was in there, and there's actually some seam sealer there that holds that wire in. Not really sure what that was for exactly, but wish we could figure it out. Just wasn't able to really get that sorted out. So yeah, the engine bay, you know, came out really nicely. We're really happy with the end product, and man, this thing just the engine bay now looks like it belongs to the rest of the truck. It really does have that nice original look to it. Even with the new paint on the engine, and it just has the right look. So we really appreciate you guys watching, and we're going to do a startup for you.